Greetings, class. This is Professor Welch again, and we're doing the final review for the Drugs and Society course. You need to know about the various acts pertaining to drugs. We had the Pure Food and Drug Act of 1906, and this required the manufacturers to list the various amounts of the ingredients on the drug on the labels. You might have gone shopping at the store and you can look for the various ingredients on the various food that you purchased. Well, that was what was required under the Food and Drug Act of 1906 for those that manufactured various drugs to list the ingredients. Now, in 1980, Congress authorized the Department of Transportation to withhold federal funds for any state that did not raise the age of drinking until the age of 21. Now, we know recently President Trump raised the age for smoking to be 21, but this refers to the age for drinking, and so that's very important. Now, other things we need to be aware of. You might want to say, who is a potential for being a drug abuser? Is it just women? Is it men? Is it people of certain races? No, all people. None is exempt. Men, women, rich, poor, and so forth, and various races. They are capable of that. Now, there's various types of uses of drugs. One is instrumental. That's for a socially approved use, such as if Martha wanted to study for her test, what she would have to do is maybe take some amphetamines to keep her awake. Well, that's a socially approved purpose. But recreational is just to get high. I've known people to be high on drugs for their recreational use, and they say it's like nothing in this world. They're extremely high. So know those two purposes. Now we have to know how drugs are inserted by needle. The fastest way is intravenous. That's right in the vein. And then there's intramuscular. That's the next fastest. That's in the muscle. And there's subcutaneous, which is just below the skin, like certain shots that are administered that way. Also, drugs can be taken by mouth. The advantage of that is, suppose someone's trying to commit suicide and they take a certain pill. Well, there's a way to reverse it because it takes about 20 minutes for the drugs to get the stomach. But if it's intravenous, it's very fast. You can't change your mind if you shoot intravenously. You have to know what were significant factors in the drug regulation period. We know that there was abuse of patent medicine. We know the book The Jungle came out about that time. So know those significant factors toward drug regulation. Now we need to look at behavioral point of view. Emphasizes what it emphasizes. You need to study that. And you need to study about learned type of behavior is important. Drug use is learned, and know the various transactions and so forth. Look at page 72. Depression is something that can follow cocaine use, and depression can lead to some type of feeling. Some people commit suicide as a result of the depression. So you need to review that. Okay, going into our next area. Have you heard of the term speedball? And what does that contain? That would contain cocaine and heroin. And there's various types of the use of drugs. There's licit, which is legal, and illicit, which is illegal. And we know that illicit methamphetamines are often used in rural or desert areas of the United States. One thing that's important is to know how far back some of these drugs go in their use. For example, opium dates back to 1200 years before Christ or earlier. That's hard to believe that 1200 years before Christ, opium drug was being used. Now we know during the 18th century and the early 19th century, China got a lot of opium from British traders, and the Chinese become very high with opium, and so the ruler stepped back in terms of letting the opium in. You need to know about the Marijuana Act of 1937 and the various federal regulations involved. Know about long-term marijuana use. Do you know people who have used marijuana use long-term? Well, what that can do is it can show some cognitive impairment, and that is discussed on page 177 of the text. Know how long that cognitive impairment is. Well, during the mid-1970s, barbiturates were implicated in half of all the drug deaths that were labeled suicide. Turn to page 194 and learn barbiturates as it relates to suicide. So now going on to our next area. Know what a high dose of heroin and know what that can do. That's a major risk factor for slowing down the gastrointestinal tract, or in truth, it's a respiratory depression. That's the better answer, is a respiratory depression. In the early days, authorities largely ignored marijuana clubs in New York because they didn't see marijuana as a major social threat. So you need to study on the use of marijuana. Know more about Valium and know what Valium is combined with that makes it very toxic. There's also a drug, it's called ROHYPNOL, that's a date rape drug, and you may have heard of this with actors like Bill Cosby, and they now have a little pill that when you put it in a drink, it will go blue to alert you that something's wrong there. And these are club drugs, and they do turn blue when dissolved in many different brands, so that's important. Now you have to know about inhalant abuse. That is children have it commonplace, and that would be in places like Central America, South America, and Asia. So now we'll be ending our first lecture, preparing for the final exam, and then we'll go on to tape 2.